Welcome to our channel. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most misunderstood concepts in personal finance. We often use the terms rich and wealthy interchangeably, as if they are synonyms describing the same state of financial abundance. However, as author Morgan Housel eloquently points out in The Psychology of Money, they are actually distinct, almost opposing concepts. Being rich is a current state of income and display, while being wealthy is a hidden, accumulating state of net worth. Today, we are going to peel back the layers of this financial dichotomy to understand why the very act of seeing money often prevents us from keeping it.
This distinction is profoundly psychological because it challenges how our brains process value. Humans are sensory creatures. We rely on visual cues to navigate social hierarchies and assess safety or success. When we see a Ferrari driving down the street, our brain immediately signals success and abundance. We cannot see the driver's bank account or their credit card statement. We only see the object. The irony, of course, is that wealth is hidden. It is the option not taken. It is the money not spent. Psychologically, it is incredibly difficult to value what is invisible over what is tangible and right in front of us.
Exactly. And that brings us to the specific definition of rich. Rich is essentially high current income. It is the cash flow that allows someone to make that monthly payment on the luxury SUV or the sprawling mansion. It is loud. It screams for attention. You can identify rich people instantly because they are displaying their money. But here is the trap. If you spend $100,000 on a car, you have exactly $100,000 less in wealth. You have converted a liquid, flexible asset into a depreciating, rigid object. You have the stuff, but you no longer have the money.
Let's linger on that car metaphor for a moment, because it reveals a fascinating ego trap. Housel calls this the man in the car paradox. When someone drives that expensive car, they imagine that everyone looking at them is thinking, wow, that person is so successful. But in reality, the onlookers are not thinking about the driver at all. They are looking at the car and imagining themselves in the driver's seat. The driver buys the car to gain respect and admiration, but the object actually bypasses them completely. They are purchasing a feeling of status that is never actually received by the observer.
That is such a crucial distinction. It leads us to the definition of wealth. If rich is what you spend, wealth is what you save. Wealth is the financial assets that have not yet been converted into the stuff you see at the store. It is the unspent money sitting in investment accounts, retirement funds, and compounding assets. Because it is unspent, it is invisible. You cannot see someone's retirement portfolio when you pass them on the street. This makes wealth incredibly hard to emulate. We learn by observation, but since we cannot see wealth, we struggle to model our behavior after the truly wealthy.
And this invisibility requires a specific type of psychological fortitude. To build wealth, you must be willing to suppress your ego today for a payoff that might not be visible for decades. It requires a rejection of immediate social validation. When you choose to drive a modest sedan instead of the luxury car you could technically afford, you are choosing internal security over external praise. That is a heavy psychological lift. It asks you to derive satisfaction not from what others think of you, but from the quiet knowledge of your own stability and freedom. It is an internal scorecard versus an external one.
The math backs up that psychological difficulty. The only way to accumulate wealth is if your income exceeds your lifestyle costs. But the modern world is engineered to ensure your lifestyle rises to meet your income. We call this lifestyle inflation. You get a raise, so you get a better apartment. You get a bonus, so you upgrade your wardrobe. If your spending matches your income, you might look rich, but you are not building wealth. You are running on a treadmill. Wealth creates a gap between what you could spend and what you do spend. That gap is where freedom lives.
Why do we run on that treadmill? It is evolutionary. For most of human history, resources were scarce and perishable. If you had a surplus, it made sense to consume it or display it to secure a mate or higher status in the tribe. We are hardwired to signal our fitness to survive. In the modern world, however, survival is not about the next meal. It is about the next 30 years. Our ancient instincts to display status actively work against our modern need for long-term security. We are fighting millions of years of biology every time we put money into a 401k instead of a vacation.
That biological drive explains why so many high earners go broke. We see headlines about athletes or lottery winners who lose everything. It's because they were rich, but they never learned the skills to be wealthy. Being rich requires taking risks and being optimistic. Being wealthy requires the opposite: humility and a healthy dose of paranoia. You have to believe that what you earned can be taken away. You have to save not just for a specific goal, like a house, but for the unknown. Wealth is the buffer against the unexpected, whereas richness is often leveraged to the hilt, leaving no room for error.
This brings us to the emotional texture of wealth. If richness feels like excitement and adrenaline, wealth feels like boredom and peace. Wealth is the absence of financial anxiety. It is the ability to sleep at night knowing that if you lose your job tomorrow, you will be fine for a year, or 5, or forever. That feeling doesn't give you a dopamine hit like buying a new watch does. It is a slow-burning, quiet contentment. Many people are addicted to the highs of spending and find the silence of saving uncomfortable. They mistake the anxiety of high consumption for the feeling of being alive.
Let's talk about the ultimate utility of wealth: freedom. Morgan Housel argues that the highest dividend money pays is the ability to control your time. Being rich might mean you have a high-paying job, but if that job requires you to be in the office 80 hours a week, you are not free. You are owned by your lifestyle. Wealth buys you autonomy. It allows you to take a lower-paying job with better hours, to retire early, or to help a family member in need without asking a bank for permission. Wealth transforms money from a tool of display into a tool of independence.
That independence is the ultimate psychological unlock. When you are rich but not wealthy, you are essentially a high-paid, indentured servant to your own possessions. You must keep earning to service the debt and maintenance of your visible success. This creates a subtle underlying current of stress. Conversely, the wealthy individual operates from a place of choice. This shift from have to want to fundamentally changes your relationship with work and life. You are no longer working to keep the lights on in a mansion. You are working because you find meaning in the contribution, or simply because you choose to.
It is interesting to consider how we judge others in this regard. We tend to judge wealth by what we see, which is actually spending. Housel uses the example of Roger, a man who drives a Porsche. We see Roger and think he is wealthy. But if Roger took out a loan for that car, the only thing we know about Roger's finances is that he has $2,000 less per month than he did before. We rarely stop to consider the quiet millionaire next door, who drives a 5-year-old Toyota and has a fully funded investment portfolio. The discrepancy between appearance and reality is vast.
This is why it is so hard to teach wealth, especially to children. You cannot point to wealth. You can say, look at that big house. But you cannot say, look at that compounding interest in that diversified index fund. It is abstract. This lack of visual representation means we have to rely on narratives and values rather than imitation. We have to internalize the idea that the person walking down the street in jeans and a t-shirt might possess more power and freedom than the person in the bespoke suit. It requires a complete recalibration of how we assess human value.
A great analogy Housel uses is diet and exercise. Exercise is like being rich. You perform the action, you sweat, people see you running. It is visible effort. Wealth is like dieting. It is about what you don't eat. It is the restraint. And just like it is easier to run for an hour than to fast for a day,
It is easier to spend money than to not spend it. The restraint requires constant vigilance against temptation. The world is a giant marketing machine designed to make you part with your money. Wealth is the act of saying no to that machine, over and over again.
And saying no requires a strong sense of self-worth that is independent of material goods. If your identity is tied to your possessions, you will feel diminished when you stop spending. You will feel less than. The truly wealthy understand that they are enough without the props. They do not need the external armor of luxury brands to feel valuable. This is why the journey to wealth is as much a journey of self-discovery as it is a financial one. You have to confront why you feel the need to impress strangers and heal that insecurity before you can truly build wealth.
The result of that healing and saving is the magic of compounding. This is the technical engine of wealth. When you stop interrupting your money by spending it, it begins to work for you. HOUSEL describes this as planting a tree. At first, you have to nurture it, water it, and protect it. But eventually, the root system is deep enough that it can survive on its own, and eventually, it provides shade for you. Richness is harvesting the sapling for firewood immediately. Wealth is letting a fullmist grow until it sustains you effortlessly. But you have to have the patience to watch the grass grow.
I love that forest metaphor. It speaks to the concept of enough. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalposts to stop moving. If your definition of rich keeps expanding with your income, you will never be wealthy because you will always spend the surplus. Wealth requires defining what is enough for you and being content once you reach it, regardless of what your neighbor has. It is about stepping off the hedonic treadmill and realizing that a calm, autonomous life is worth more than a chaotic, high-status one. It is finding peace in sufficiency.
So, how do we apply this? It starts with redefining success. We need to stop admiring spending and start admiring savings, even if we can't see them. We need to celebrate the friends who drive old cars so they can retire early. We need to be transparent about the difference between income and net worth. Practically, it means automating your savings so the money disappears before you have the chance to feel rich with it. It means viewing every dollar spent, not just as currency gone, but as a piece of your future freedom traded away for a momentary object.
Ultimately, the difference between being rich and being wealthy is the difference between looking successful and being free. Rich is a social performance. Wealth is a personal reality. As we close today, I invite you to look at your own finances through this lens. Are you building a facade for others to applaud, or a foundation for yourself to stand on? The most powerful money is the money no one sees, because that is the money that buys you your life back. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the psychology of money.